The only thing better than getting out of bad debt is getting out of bad debt and getting the money back. Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. Today's discussion is going to be about getting out of debt. I actually started in debt when I had first picked up the book, Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash, and when my wife and I bought our first policy and started implementing a Becoming Your Own Banker approach. So when we started using this infinite banking concept for our need of finance, we had third-party debt. We had done a lot of things conventionally. We had pursued, careers and we had financed our college experiences and vehicles and had credit cards. So we're just really pretty average, pretty normal, pretty run of the mill as far as our approach on things. We didn't have a really in-depth financial education growing up. Perhaps you could relate and understand. And this idea of becoming your own banker, that was not taught in schools, in the churches, at home. You didn't learn it from parents and grandparents, teachers or preachers or anybody either. There was the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And before that, yes, there was whole life insurance, but it was R. Nelson Nash that codified and scaled the idea of leveraging whole life policies. And of course, now we have, properly structured whole life policies with mutual companies that pay a dividend, and that's the asset, that's the vehicle that we use to systematize our privatized banking. So all that to say that when I looked at the channel and our podcast, so I've talked about debt before, and it had been a long time since I had specifically addressed debt. And I believe that part of that is due to the fact that with some real honest introspection, we could probably agree that when I had debt, when you had debt or have debt, it may not be the case that we've exercised the utmost discipline in some real pertinent areas. Okay. And that does lead us to talk about things that Nash addresses in his book, such as Parkinson's law. Nash himself at the time of the book, and he says this, he says that, what caused him to have a much better prayer life, and to begin to grasp what this infinite banking concept was when he was dealing with a $500,000 real estate investment that went south when there was a big real estate bust, and he found himself holding a note on this property at 23.5% interest. I mean, that's almost $70,000 a year just in interest alone. Well, that's what improved his prayer life, he said, and what was the genesis of him coming to the realization that, he needed to be accessing capital from the policies that he owned at the time, just plain Jane vanilla whole life policies, and more so. Meaning he realized that he was undercapitalized in those policies, that he should have been paying significantly higher premiums. And he wasn't paying small premiums for that time either. But he needed to, the limiting factor was the premiums that he had been paying up to that point. Because he describes this and lays this out in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, that he used the capital from those policies to begin the process of getting out of that bad debt. So I started with debt. Nash in his book talks about his debt experience as well, and the genesis of the infinite banking concept, such as we can read about and know and experience now. So again, for myself, my wife and I, we got our first policy in 2016, and over the course of the past several years, we've consistently acquired more policies to add scale to our own privatized banking system. We have 6 policies now with multiple different companies, and we've used those policies to do things like pay off student loan debt. We've financed family vacations. We've paid off credit cards. We've paid off a vehicle. So we've used our policies and policy loans to account for the debt that we brought into our financial existence, our financial world at the time of implementing IBC into our lives. We already had this debt that we had to be able to take care of. And we've used our policies for lots of other things, business and personal, otherwise since. So I did want to specifically address getting out of debt, because I know there are lots of loud voices in that area in particular. And I believe we're just going to cover a lot of ground. You know, Nash shares his story. I've shared some of ours, and I'll probably share some more. And we're going to talk about the different ways, because I know that there are folks that I will have a conversation with, clients and prospective clients. Folks will sometimes say, well, I want to get out of debt, and then I want to start this infinite banking idea. Okay? And if you feel like you need to do that, awesome. Fantastic. Do that. Be about it. You know, I organically came to the same realization that Nash did. When I read Nash's book and saw a live presentation to introduce me to the infinite banking concept, I knew that was how we were going to get out of debt. Now, could I have just simply used a real generic snowball approach to paying off debt? Just pick the smallest thing that we owe something on, a credit card, let's say, pay that off, and then take that previous payment and start snowballing that to the next item that we want to pay off, and then snowball those to the next item that we want to pay off, and just keep going till we get to a house, and or whatever the big ticket item is, and be completely done over the course of the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, however long it takes, because I know we all start at different places. Could I have done that? Yes. My wife and I could have done that. What we decided to do was what Nash decided to do. Before we paid anything to debt, and this is what I want to share here, is I'm not telling you what to do, but I am going to promote the idea that you make educated decisions with understanding, not just knowledge, but with understanding. And one thing that I understood after being exposed to this idea, my paradigm shifted, was that when those dollars leave our hands, they're gone forever. If I take money from my cash flow or my income to pay off a credit card, I don't get that back. That's gone forever. Gone forever. And if I'm paying early and extra, okay, to be able to snowball that, yes, that does snowball that. Yes, that does pick up momentum, and that's a beautiful thing. But when I realized that I don't get those dollars back, that's when it hit me that the only thing better than paying off bad debt, because it's a great idea to pay off bad debt. If you decide that something in your life is being a leech on you, and you decide, well, it's time to get rid of that, beautiful, be about it. But what I decided was that the only thing better than paying off debt, and this was my understanding, the only thing better than paying off debt would be is if I could pay off debt and get the money back. I know that sounds weird. It sounds strange. It sounds... You've never heard that anywhere else. I'd never heard that anywhere else. But that's what I'm saying. What if you could pay off debt and get the money back? Without working harder, without changing your cash flows, without taking on any additional risk. What if you could add one thing to what it is that you're already doing and get the money back? Okay, so that's what it is that we're going to be talking about. So I've mentioned Parkinson's law, I believe, or if I haven't, I'm starting with that now. So when Nash addresses the infinite banking concept in his book, he doesn't start with policy illustrations and all these different things. He starts talking about, the human problem, for example. Like Parkinson's law says that when we earn more, we tend to spend more. So expenses tend to rise to equal or exceed, in this world of credit that we live in now, or even exceed our income. And again, that's what brings us back to talking about discipline. Dave Ramsey has probably inspired more people than anybody else, perhaps even. To give him credit where credit's due, has probably inspired many, 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 many people to get out of debt. That's a beautiful thing. But I will not hesitate to ask, well, if you think that getting out of debt is great and that's what you decide to do, what would you think about getting out of debt and getting the money back? Okay, so that's what we're talking about is Parkinson's law. Next is going to be Willie Sutton's law. Nash talks about Willie Sutton's law. I mean, this is just one of those things that we may or may not consider. People try to illegally and legally take our money from us. That's something that we should consider when we come to the conclusion that we do want to get out of debt. The golden rule: he who has the gold makes the rules. Again, if you send dollars from your income or your cash flows to pay off debt, great. I mean, if that's what you decide to do, great. But if you could do that and get the money back, doesn't that keep you in a strong position of being well capitalized, having the gold and making your own life rules, accounting for your own need of finance? Yes, it does. The arrival syndrome is probably really important here because, again, if you're looking into, well, how do I get out of debt efficiently, effectively, certainly, then being open-minded, staying open-minded, because I've read, for example, I've read Robert Kiyosaki's books, listened to his podcasts. I've also read Dave Ramsey's books, listened to his show. Okay, they have opposing views on lots of things, debt being one of them. Now, they would both agree that liabilities, that bad third-party debt is it's just a drain on you. It's not good. That doesn't help you. Okay, as an investor, Kiyosaki was, that's not going to help you. Okay, but debt could be used as a tool, he says. And Dave, of course, cut up the credit cards. Don't go inside of a restaurant unless you're working there. Deliver pizzas to make extra money. Get gazelle intent. All these different things, right? Get out of debt. Don't look left or right. Get out of debt. Okay, well, again, I'm promoting the idea that you could do that and you can get the money back. And the arrival syndrome, thinking that, oh, well, I know that. I know how to do that. All I got to do is, snowball my debt and I'll be done. Great. Again, that's an admirable and a good result if you get out of debt. Could it be better? Yes, it could be better. You could get that money back. And then there are lots of other principles like use it or lose it, thinking long range, don't be afraid to capitalize, don't do business with banks, and many other principles, many other laws, rules, just facts that should be addressed before implementing this infinite banking concept. Again, we may not have been exhibiting our best disciplines in getting into debt in the first place. So we need to have some honest introspection, and we need to, fight that arrival syndrome and evaluate these concepts and these principles that Nash is sharing in the book, because it's a paradigm shift to put yourself in the position of becoming your own banker. You've never been your own banker before, unless you're a client already, and of course, and you're tuning in, continuing your education and implementing the infinite banking concept. But if you're vetting this idea, then you've never been your own banker before in the way that I'm talking about, where you could, here are the 3 rules to infinite banking. Pay yourself first, pay yourself with interest, and get the money back. See, everything's financed one of 2 ways. Either we use somebody else's money, pay them interest on their terms and conditions, or we set aside the capital and then we have to liquidate that, go back down to 0, and we forfeit the opportunity to earn interest on that money that entire time. And then the third is, well, we capitalize our own system, and we do so with interest, and then we deploy that money for whatever it is that you're going to do anyway. In this instance, we're talking about getting out of debt, okay? And then you get the money back. You recapture those dollars back into your own privatized banking system. Okay? So pay yourself first, pay yourself with interest, and get the money back. Recapture those dollars. Those are the 3 rules of banking. Now, after evaluating yourself, and of course we can agree that the borrower is servant to the lender. It's just that way. If you go to the bank to get a loan, it's you submitting 2 years of financials. It's you giving, one of your kidneys and your firstborn, and the red tape and all the scrutiny and paying the interest and acquiescing to their terms and conditions. It's all of that. It's all of that. you are beholden to the third-party lender. Whereas if you decide, well, I'm going to get out of debt, but I'm going to do it as my own banker because everything's financed. Everything's financed. Even debt is financed. Debt's financed. I mean, that's how we have it, right? Because, and here, let me interject real quick. Let's look at it from the commercial bank's perspective. Commercial banks view deposits, and we like it when we get deposits, right? We get paid, that's direct deposited into the bank. But think about this. To the banks, deposits are liabilities, but it's when they loan out our money or a multiple of our money. I'm trying not to get sidetracked there. That's what Nash called evil. He said banks are loaning money that doesn't exist. They're making money out of thin air, and that's evil. But when they're loaning our money, loans to the bank are assets. So everything is financed, including debt. And when we arrive at deciding paying off our debt, who do you want to receive the interest dollars for the debt that you're going to pay off? Where do you want that to go? Would you like that to go to the commercial bank? I mean, who do we want the dollars to end up with ultimately? The credit card people? The boat people? The airplane people? The motorcycle people? The car people? The college people? The engagement ring people? The vacation people? I mean, where do we want those dollars to end up? Remember the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. Remember Nash's principle of don't be afraid to capitalize. So many things here. Where do we want those dollars to end up? See, if you put yourself in the position to become your own banker in paying off debt, that puts yourself in the position to receive principal back, interest back, and eventually, of course, profits back. And you, the whole time, you're operating with an appreciating asset that you privately own and control to be able to pay that debt off and recapture that capital back into that privatized banking system. So just consider these options. If you pay off debt from your cash flow, what do you have when you're done? You pay off the credit card. What do you have when you pay off the credit card? Hopefully lessons learned, sure. But I'm saying rubber meets road. What do you have? A paid off credit card. Yes, you have that, but nothing else. That's it. Nothing. What if you save up cash? Let's talk about buying something. What if you save up cash to buy something instead of using debt, conventional debt? What do you have when you go out and you buy your next vehicle? Well, you have the vehicle, and then you've liquidated all that capital that you had amassed. Also, the whole time that you were amassing capital to go out and pay cash for, this is from my Cash is King, folks. Okay, you set aside money because cash is king in your life. The whole time that you set money aside and it's sitting there being lazy, you're missing out on EVA. You're missing out on the cost of your capital. You're missing out on the interest that you could have otherwise earned. You're missing out on compound interest that you otherwise could have earned. And it was Albert Einstein, pretty smart guy, who said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. So you miss out on all the earnings that you could have had on your capital. And when you do go out and buy that vehicle, you just liquidated all the capital. So what do you have? Well, you got that thing, you've got the vehicle, sure. But what else do you have? Nothing. Now see, here's the difference. When Nash said, okay, we've decided we need to pay significant premiums into policies that we own and control, and then leverage those policies to be able to do X, Y, or Z, in this case, pay off debt, let's say. Okay. Well, when the debt's paid off, what do we have? Well, we've got the debt paid off. We've got the lessons learned, everything we've talked about so far. But we've also got this appreciating asset wherein we enjoyed having an appreciating asset that grew, the cash values grew in that policy every day. weekends, holidays, pandemics, shutdowns, what have you, an appreciating asset that we still privately own and control, wherein we've kicked this snowball down the hill of compound interest grew uninterrupted, and we have this system, we have this entity wherein we can now recapture the principal and the interest and any profits for anything that we do in the future into this privatized banking entity from having paid off debt. Not to mention now, because we're accounting for our need of finance, we're accounting for the banking function in our lives. We've exponentially increased our profits as an individual because we had been doing nothing in banking before, and now we're accounting for our need of finance. So principal, interest, profits, all of that back to our system now. It's a beautiful thing when we wrap our minds around that, and that's what I started by asking, right? Or at least saying, is that the only thing better than paying off debt is paying off debt and getting the money back. And where does that money go? Who owns that? Who controls that? Well, if it's a properly structured whole life policy with a mutual company that pays dividends, it's yours. So you still have that after the debt is paid off. And when I'm talking about getting that back into your system, let me focus on interest really quick here, because Nash in his book says that 34.5% of every dollar, okay, so 34.5 cents of every dollar that we earn is paid in interest. And he was very conservative in saying that. But those are dollars that forever leave our hands, the interest dollars. I mean, if you're considering paying off debt, or you've already decided, just look at any statement that you have, if you dare, and look and consider, if you had debt last year, how much you paid in interest total last year. House, cars, just everything, credit cards, everything. If you dare, look at how much you've paid in interest dollars alone. And then ask yourself the real simple question: who would you like to have that money? Where would you like that to be? With the credit card people, with the car people, or would you like that to be in your own privatized banking system? Because what's conventionally made known to us is, we'll get a new credit card, start with a 0 APR on this new credit card, and just transfer stuff over and save interest that way, or come to the car dealership and get 0 down, 0% financing, all these different things, or refinance the house, do a cash out. Let's do debt consolidation to consolidate your debt, get you a low rate. Here's where I need to point out, it's not so much the rate, and this is what Nash says in the book. It's not so much the rate of interest that hurts us, but it is the volume of interest. That's why I asked you, and I encourage you, if you dare, go and look and see how much, not at what rate, but how much money you paid last year in interest dollars. Okay? Think about medication. It's not so much the rate that matters, okay, but it's the volume that matters. Because with a medication, if you don't get enough, then you're not solving the issue. But also, if you get too much, you could kill someone. Okay, so it's not the rate of interest that matters so much as it is the volume. I mean, if you could get a better rate on something, okay, get a better rate on something. But ignoring the volume of interest that the average American is bleeding out, that is the crux of the problem. And if we could redirect those dollars back into our privatized banking system, we're going to be much better off. And remember, everything's financed. Right now we're talking about debt, but it doesn't matter what it is that we're talking about, whether we're paying off something or procuring something. Everything is financed, and you can become your own banker. So what I would like to say is, if you've heard or even adopted the idea of, becoming gazelle intent, not looking left or right, but deciding, okay, I'm gonna fight this debt. I'm gonna get out of this debt with a vengeance. Okay, fantastic. I'm your biggest supporter. I'm your biggest fan. Do it. But don't be so gazelle intent that you close your eyes. Okay? There is a cost to capital. Your cash flows, your income, your capital, your money has a cost to it. And if you receive and have cash flows and income that you immediately direct to paying off debt, you're accomplishing a worthwhile and a worthy goal. And I commend you. But I will also ask that you not close your eyes, that you not experience this arrival syndrome of, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm paying this off. Okay, there's a cost to capital. If you could turn lazy dollars into productive dollars, every dollar can perform one task. Any dollar can perform one task, whether it's buying a candy bar. Okay, but if you could turn lazy dollars into productive ones, if you could get more than one task accomplished with the same dollars, if you could procure an asset, an appreciating asset that will also help you do what it is that you want to do and do it faster, and ultimately allow you to recapture those dollars back into a privatized banking system that you just continue. I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine if you didn't only just pay off debt, but if you got that back? I mean, what does that mean for the next thing that you want to do? I mean, you're just going to be growing and scaling and growing and scaling, and it's over the course of your lifetime. This is not an over in the night process to become your own banker. You know, my wife and I, like I said, we started out with credit card debt and vehicle debt and student loan debt and all these different, and we were wanting to do things as a family, take vacations, grow businesses, get into real estate, all these different things also. And what we decided on was stepping into the role of becoming our own bankers with what we had learned. And of course, now that's the whole impetus behind, you know, what it is that I do professionally. Is I'm here to encourage you and to teach you and hopefully speed up your learning curve that we've acquired over the past several years of beginning this path of becoming our own banker, buying multiple policies from multiple companies as consumers, accomplishing more as a family by accounting for the banking function for ourselves, and then getting to the point where professionally, you know, we're helping our friends and clients do the same thing, become their own banker, take back the control of the banking function in their lives, accomplish the goals and the tasks that they choose to do themselves, and get the money back. So I simply hope that this conversation has been helpful. If you have a question, you can put that down in the comment section below. If you'd like to have a conversation about how to implement the infinite banking concept to pay off debt in your business, this could be in your home, your investing, whatever it is that you're doing, then you could reach me at 828-817-4223. You can email durhamtalents@gmail.com. This has been a great pleasure for me. I look forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. Take care.
What you've got to do is say, Dad, you're out of here.
And get the money back. Deep in the heart of the Serengeti.
Dave Ramsey got nothing on this.
That's it.